Nancy Green here. And one of the things that I found really interesting was the dynamic or sort of the parallel between Peggy and Gladys in terms of the courtships that are going on there. And sort of, one side wanting her, Gladys to marry the Duke, and then with Peggy, the doctor, and the obstacles there, particularly with Arthur and him being a former slave and kind of having personal issues there with how he was being treated. So I wanted to know if you could talk a bit about that and the dynamic there.
Yeah, we got Louisa and Thaisa and I, they play Gladys and Marion, all got to be in a piece together. And it was like essentially the next generation sort of becomes the leading ladies of the Gilded Age. And it feels like that, like we all kind of came into the show as these sort of budding ingenues, and along with our characters have really grown into these women that we are, that are navigating the space. And I think that Peggy really taking her rightful place in these love stories, in these courtships, also kind of elevates the real estate she gets to take up on the show. And I feel like we've both watched Peggy and Gladys kind of be suffocated by their parents and figure out how to carve their own path. And with Gladys, it's interesting because we're watching her start to use her mother's tools in order to succeed. And whereas with Peggy, it's interesting because we're watching her parents really learn how to be on her team. And I think it's such a beautiful story of healing. We get to see, no one would have blamed Peggy for never speaking to her parents again after what she went through with them, but we get to see this beautiful story of repair and see them really ride for Peggy and be like, no, the Kirklands are going to make it seem like you're the one who's flawed, but you're the one who's worthy to make this choice regardless. And I thought that was like a really beautiful kind of turn on its head of what could have been something that they could have felt ashamed of her as well.
Thank you. And it's very interesting. I like kind of watching the dynamic there. So I was curious about the novel and the fact that she's doing this at a time when it was very difficult for women to have any sort of career. I mean, you see with one of the other dynamics, the teacher, she is being criticized for making money. And also, being that Peggy is Black, having this sort of accomplishment going on for her. I wanted to know if you could talk a bit about that and how they kind of work that into the series.
I think what's cool about our show and what's amazing about the way Erica Dunbar's brain works and Julian Fellowes' brains work is that there's precedent for almost everything. So Peggy, she's not based on this person, but Julia C. Collins was the first Black woman in the United States to publish a novel. And I think she did it in the 1850s maybe, but there's like always precedent where we get to say like, this was rare, but it did happen. And then you get to imagine around, well, I wonder what that would have been like for her to move through that space. And similarly, like there was this book called Black Gotham that Peggy's family is sort of based off of, this Black pharmacist family in the 1880s that lived in Brooklyn at that time. And so it was sort of like getting out of the idea of it being fantasy and really rooting it in like, okay, well, some people did it, and what did their neighborhoods look like, and what would these conversations had looked like. And it's not so dissimilar to now, where there are so many spaces that are gate kept, but there are a few of us who break through. I think that it's a tightrope that many of us still understand, even if there's like a few more that are let in than before. It was like, I think Peggy was just very focused on what was available to her.
Nice, thank you.
Yeah, I hope that answered the question.
It did, it did. I mean, I was just fascinated by that. I already knew that, but yeah. Or I didn't know the specific person, but I knew that that was a historical.
Mm.